Phase 4 of the MCU is in full swing now, and between all the awesome new characters, the Kang sightings, the teams building, the good guys turning bad and the bad guys turning good, it's almost too hard to catch our breath. But even though there's still so much to see in the present, I want to look toward the future a bit. That's right, I'm talking today about Phase 5 of the MCU and what films and stories we might see. Is this all leading to Secret Wars? Will surprise new characters get their own movies? Will there be a new Avengers level threat? Let's talk about all that right now. I know we all want the X-Men in the MCU so that we can see things like Wolverine calling Captain America bub and things like that, but I think as things stand, the mutants probably would be better served being introduced fully in Phase 5. Phase 4 should focus on bringing the Fantastic Four into this world properly, and more on them in a bit, but that means I think the X-Men should be saved for later. Don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. Going into Phase 4, I was convinced that we'd get X-Men. I believed that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness would pull a reverse House of M and have Scarlet Witch responsible for bringing the mutants into our universe. Well, I'm now glad I'm not a betting man, but I actually think it's better this way. By waiting until Phase 5 to give us an X-Men focused phase, then it gives everything a little breathing room. The X-Men aren't just a one hero type of thing, it's all the mutants and all their backstories, and if we truly want to get to a place where we're having complete X-Men movies and mutant spin-offs, then it's best we wait a bit before bringing them in. Plus, by waiting until Phase 5, you can build up to Secret Wars. Having the mutants be introduced in the other big universe in Phase 5 means you can start laying the seeds for our universe and their universe to conflict with each other. Okay, I mentioned the Fantastic Four in the previous entry, but even though they'll get introduced technically in Phase 4 with their solo movie, unless scheduling changes things, I wanted to use this to say how the Fantastic Four could and should become the new faces for the MCU. Like, yeah, their Phase 4 movie will introduce them, but I think Phase 5 could be used to move them to a more integral role. I mean, think about it. In the comics, they were the ones originally having the most conflict with Galactus, and so if you want to bring Galactus into Phase 5, then Reed Richards and his family could be the ones primed to stop him. Sort of like how Tony Stark was the main hero on Earth most worried about a threat from someone like Thanos. But then, not only that, but Reed Richards could be made to have a connection with Nathaniel Richards, aka Kang the Conqueror. So not only would Reed's brilliant mind probably be used in whatever multiversal travel science shenanigans that are coming up, but he could be directly related to the new ultimate big bad. So as much as Phase 1 through 3 were about the big three of Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor, I think Phase 5 could be more focused on building huge stories around the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. The Thunderbolts movie was announced to have a director recently, and honestly, it's the best type of movie to make in Phase 5. Sure, they would bill it as an anti-hero-esque team-up movie that rivals the Suicide Squad, but honestly, it feels more like an opportunity for Marvel to make a movie with great characters that can't or won't headline their own solo movies. I mean, already that team could include Yelena and Bucky, two fantastic supporting characters who I don't think Marvel would ever greenlight a solo project for. So this is an opportunity to make a movie about side characters altogether. You can have US Agent, Baron Zemo, Taskmaster, maybe Wong and Abomination all together on a team. I think the MCU has gotten so big now that Phase 5 should focus on a bunch of lesser known team-up films that aren't just the Avengers. That way the franchise can continue to tell stories with interesting characters that we want to see more of. Plus, a Thunderbolts team could potentially lead us to a bit of a darker territory. I mean, it's still the MCU, it won't get too dark, but this is a chance for them to push the boundaries a bit with some anti-heroes. Yeah, these next few entries will be all about team-ups that I think could define Phase 5, and I think the MCU is setting the stage quite well for the Young Avengers. Teen heroes are slowly beginning to rise up, and it would make sense to put them all in a room together. I mean, we have Kate Bishop as the new Hawkeye, Eli Bradley from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, America Chavez in Multiverse of Madness, Kid Loki, who conveniently left before all the Lokis started to perish in the Loki show, the list goes on. Yeah, I don't think Wanda's kids Billy and Tommy will make any more appearances, and Miss Marvel might be too busy hanging with Captain Marvel down the line. But you have upcoming heroes like Ironheart, who could fill some Young Avenger member slots. Oh, and don't forget Cassie Lang, who was recast with a more popular actress for the upcoming Quantumania movie, which hints at big things planned for the character. All I'm saying is, by the time Phase 5 rolls around, most of our favorite heroes will be in their 50s, and it would make sense to have the franchise pivot to a younger generation of heroes who have been inspired by what came before. That would be the way to start to build a great legacy feeling between old heroes and new heroes as a way to keep the franchise fresh in the next few years. So team-ups are obviously the focus of this chunk of video entries, and I have two more interesting ones. The first is the West Coast Avengers. Again, same idea that the MCU now has so many characters they need to branch out in their own teams, and West Coast Avengers are a good way to provide some space from the regular Avengers who mainly operate around New York. Now, a lot of original West Coast Avengers members either haven't been introduced yet or wouldn't work, but there's one key member that I think is important. Vision is a part of that team, and right now in the MCU, White Vision needs the storyline. He charted off toward parts unknown at the end of WandaVision, and Scarlet Witch was too preoccupied turning evil and hunting for her kids to really give him a second thought, which was incredibly strange. But Vision is now an even more fascinating character than he was before. He's in his original body, without the Mind Stone, and his memories have basically been uploaded to him by a fake version of himself. Don't you want to see a character like that more? And him forming a team on the West Coast could be the fresh start he needs. He could recruit War Machine, maybe Kate Bishop, and even Hank Pym. I love New York as a setting, but they can't all be based in New York anymore. So the last team-up I'll mention is a bit of a darker one that I do think the MCU is sort of pushing for as of late, and that would be the Midnight Suns. They're characters with maybe a mystical slant that's different than your average team of tech geniuses and strong people. In the comics, you have members like Doctor Strange, Werewolf by Night, Blade, Ghost Rider, and Morbius the Morbing Vampire. And while Multiverse of Madness dipped its toe into darker territory, I wonder if it was a test run for letting Sam Raimi get weirder with the eventual Doctor Strange 3. How cool would it be to see this darker team that's influenced by vampires, sorcerers, werewolves, and demons? That opens up a whole new side of the MCU that has been left unexplored, and that's why it's perfect for Phase 5. We need to keep evolving and telling new types of stories in the MCU, or else it will get stagnant, and something regarding the Midnight Suns is the perfect answer to that. All these members would be great. Well, maybe not Morbius. Okay, my Midnight Suns pitch is that it starts with all these characters gathering, and then Blade immediately chops off Morbius's head, and the real team up then begins. Alright, enough about team-ups, let's talk about some of the biggest and most unique Phase 5 movies that we could get that would shape Phase 5. And I want to start with our favorite Asgardian, Thor. Now, it's pretty amazing the situation Thor finds himself in as a character. Who would have thought that out of the three main OG Avengers, Thor would be the one to potentially be getting a fifth solo movie? That's thanks to the radical character shift in Thor Ragnarok that set up Thor for more stories down the line. Hey, if Chris Hemsworth and Taika Waititi like making Thor movies, then I say let them keep at it. And that leads us to Thor 5. At that point, Thor would become basically the most experienced MCU hero by far, which puts him in a position of leadership that he's completely shunned at the start of Thor Love and Thunder. How do younger heroes react to Thor now in Phase 5? That's something I think would be interesting. Also, Thor is your perfect gateway to weird cosmic introductions. He's still such a popular character that you can use his Phase 5 movie to really bring in characters like Galactus or even more celestial storylines. Because look, I liked Eternals more than most, but from Disney's side of things, you have to wonder if they'd rather continue most of those storylines in a Thor movie that they know people will respond to more positively. Overall, Thor 5 in Phase 5 allows us to maintain a connection to the earlier days of the MCU while still branching off and doing new stuff. Another important movie for Phase 5 will be Shang-Chi 2. I honestly was really surprised about how much I loved Shang-Chi. I know it was going to be good, but I didn't expect it to be one of my favorite Phase 4 projects. And the movie ends with the tease of the origins of the 10 rings. They're undeniably ancient, there's no records of where they came from, and they're sending out a beacon to parts unknown. Now this could lead to two exciting developments in the MCU. The first, most logical answer is that the rings are sending out a beacon to McLuhan's, the shape-shifting, dragon-like aliens who made the rings in the comics. If this is the case, then I think more of the rings' powers are about to be unlocked, which would position Shang-Chi as one of the most powerful heroes in the MCU, which is pretty cool. The other, more far-out option is that the beacon that the rings are signaling with are reaching out to another universe, sort of like we've seen play out in the Miss Marvel TV show. That would put Shang-Chi's rings at the center of the growing multiverse saga that we have brewing, and it again puts Shang-Chi front and center of everything. So even though I think some heroes will fade into the background to make room for new heroes in Phase 5, Shang-Chi is just getting started. It was announced after the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show that Sam Wilson was getting a solo Captain America 4 movie, and I think this film will be an important setup for the Avengers team that has to eventually unite to save our universe from Kang. The TV show followed Sam as he grappled with the idea of picking up the shield and what it truly means to be a black Captain America. And now the movie could show him stepping up to be the leader of the other Avengers. Because, let's face it, it's so unclear the status of the current official Avengers roster at the moment. Yeah, we know Captain Marvel, Bruce Banner, and Wong all hang out to discuss big events, but even that seems messy. Earth needs their first team together again and united properly in order to handle any threats that comes their way. We saw what happened last time the Avengers were broken up, and that helped bring about Infinity War. So Captain America 4 could be Sam's journey in forming an official public Avengers team and uniting all these different factions and heroes into something manageable. Sam is great, and he's going to make a really compelling Captain America, but if he wants to do more than just be a solo hero, then he's got to start bringing the team back together. So moving on from individual movies, I wanted to discuss what Phase 5 can do in broad strokes, with one of those being expanding the cosmos. So although Phase 3 ended with a giant purple alien wiping out half the universe, both Infinity War and the Endgame finales were very much Earthbound. And that makes sense. The big final fight can't happen on some random planet somewhere, because then where exactly are the stakes? But Phase 5 can continue the threads started in Phase 4 and really open up the galaxy in terms of new characters, alien planets, and other big cosmic stories. Like, I've already mentioned Galactus, but what about the other cosmic entities like the Phoenix Force, the rest of the Celestials, the embodiments of the universe, the Infinites, and all those big players on the cosmic side of things? I think there was an initial hesitation to have space set adventures completely away from Earth, but now I think the MCU is in a great position to have two distinct sides. One is the cosmic side that can have all sorts of cosmic adventures without having to tie to Earth and what's happening there. For this franchise to really grow, I think that's the best bet. And to build off that, I think Phase 5 could build out the street level side of the MCU more so than ever before. Starting with the next Spider-Man movie, which I really do believe should be a street level story compared to some globe-trotting multiverse story, that could pave the way for the development of things like the Defenders. We know Daredevil's in the MCU. We know Kingpin is in the MCU. We know Echo is in the MCU. All these characters can start fleshing out the street level side of things and lead to an MCU version of that failed Netflix experiment. Okay, that's unfair. It wasn't necessarily a failure because a lot of those individual seasons were great, but the actual Netflix Defenders show, such a disappointment, and I know that could be done better. But let's be real here. Phase 5 should be mostly about the multiverse. I feel like we're still barely tapping into the concept of the multiverse as a whole, and that's because Marvel wants to get the general audiences used to that idea and not confuse them. Yeah, you and I completely get that the Mr. Fantastic we saw in Multiverse of Madness won't be our Mr. Fantastic, but you know that someone somewhere out there will see the eventual Fantastic Four movie and think to themselves, wait, didn't I just see this guy explode in one of the previous movies? And since I mentioned Multiverse of Madness, guys, that really didn't feel like a multiverse, right? There were like 3 universes that we visited. So Phase 4 is still slowly embracing this concept, but Phase 5 is when we can finally go full tilt and just get a little crazy with the multiverse and its vast potential. Besides the X-Men, I wonder if Phase 5 is when we'll get our first movie set entirely in a different universe. If so, who would it be for? And finally, could Phase 5 bring about Secret Wars? That's kinda what all this has been leading to. All the stories that I've mentioned here could be small steps to this eventual huge event at the end of Phase 5. The Secret Wars I'm talking about is the more recent one, which saw basically the multiverse in danger and different heroes from different universes clashing to save their home. I think Secret Wars is the best way to end Phase 5 because if you introduce the X-Men earlier in the phase, then you could lead to an Avengers versus X-Men movie that sees 2 competing universes worried that they're going to be wiped out forever. And then when Secret Wars eventually ends with everyone on the same side, then Phase 6 could be fleshing out this multiversal war even more, and this whole multiverse saga could end with the final Kang confrontation. It's ambitious, sure, but so was the Infinity Saga. I think it's possible, and that means Secret Wars in Phase 5. I think it's about time the MCU gave Howard the Duck his own spin-off show, don't you think? Heck, why not let Phase 5 be completely random characters getting their shot just to see if Marvel really is unsinkable? Give me Dupe, give me Doorman, give me Orb. Yeah, look up who those characters are. Let's get weird with it.